Roll call.
All present except Alderperson Fischel.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start letter C with public citizens' comments. We have 3 individuals here that would like to make citizens' comments. First off is Brad Allen. And Brad, I will time you 5 minutes. And if you state your name and address, please.
Yes. Hi, my name is Brad Allen. I live at 1411 South Prospect. I've been a member, volunteer, board of directors, and on the board of directors for the past 8 or 9 years, and I'm current president of Northwood County Historical Society. I want to thank the city for the many years of support you've given the Historical Society. It's been a very important part of our budget. I want to thank Mike Myers for his advocacy for our group. He's been the face of us for many years, and I appreciate all the efforts you put in. I'm here to ask the council to consider our request for the 2023 budget we submitted. I want to say a few words about our organization that aren't mentioned in our request letter. The Historical Society started in 1952, taking care of our local history. In the mid-70s, we moved to 212 West 3rd Street into what has become our greatest artifact. That is the home of one of Marshfield's founding fathers, who was a civic-minded businessman, became mayor of our city, and the 18th governor of the state of Wisconsin, William Upham. Mr. Upham was a great benefactor to the many amenities the city has today. He started the first electric plant, giving us streetlights before some of the bigger cities. He had donated time, land, and money to the city for decades to help make our city what it is today. We are very proud to call his former residence our home, and furthermore, we are very happy to get to share it with our community, as well as all the many visitors we get from across the country. I'd like to also recognize many volunteers throughout the years whose dedication they've given to keep our history alive. And I'm excited to say that we have a younger generation that's stepping up to fill in the void of our caretakers past. But we could always use more volunteers, just saying. The post-COVID bounce back had been fairly strong. We've had a lot of visitors, and our major fundraisers, the Pie and Ice Cream Social and our Hub City Days carriage display, have been well attended. But I would also like to point out that we are not just a museum. We are a venue. We have weddings. We're open for business and group meetings, family reunions, as well as the educational aspect with the student tours that we do for the 3rd graders to come through the years. We have volunteer opportunities for students post-college and college students looking to gain credits. While our income from these events has been consistent over the years, the cost of operating has increased, as has everyone else's costs have increased. Lawn care, gas and electric, security system, insurance, all on the rise. It's important to note that the money we receive from the city is a blessing, and it helps keep the society viable. We are one of the few societies operating in the state that does not have an endowment to draw off of. It is our membership, our volunteers, our fundraisers, and the kind donations of our neighbors toward individual projects that have sustained us for 70 years. We are in the process of developing a sustainable donation program. Mike and I just talked about that yesterday. And someday we hope to never have to write you a letter to request funds, but this is not that year. I'm hoping your committee sees fit to continue the support to preserve our area's history. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Any questions? I got backup. Okay, thank you.
Next, Bill Panker.
Good evening. William Penker, 600 Sycamore Avenue. My comments this evening are in 2 parts. And first, there are comments from 3 different perspectives. And then there is a second comment. First, as one who has a long association with the emergency services, I am disappointed with the cuts to the budgets of the police and fire department. I do recognize the city's unique financial situation. But from a taxpayer's perspective, and I know this may irritate some of the department heads, I do ask, do all budgets have the same significance? Do they all have the same importance? Second, having spent my entire career in public agencies, having had budget responsibilities, including making cuts, having worked within state-mandated budget constraints, I do have great empathy for your current position. I would not want to be there. And the longest-serving members of the Common Council probably remember from years ago, I guess this might be Alderman Fire and Alderman Wagner. I once noted, local taxpayers have a finite ability to pay. This is something Mrs. Spiros had mentioned at a previous meeting. That finite ability still exists, and it may be more serious today than in the past, and I do appreciate your concern for that. And from a third perspective, when I come to a meeting, before I leave, Mrs. Penker always says, have a good meeting. If I come to a Common Council meeting and I wind up bringing my notebook with me, she also says, behave yourself and tell Ed to behave himself as well. Having seen too many budget meetings, we both know, as you do, that these can be volatile. But from what I've seen and heard, and in spite of some of the dire cuts that have been made, it appears that you also, at some point or another, have heard what she said. Or as the Nana would put it, and remember, no one ever argues with a Nana. Be kind, be polite, do your best. So ending that, both Cynthia and I do wish you well in the final rounds of your discussion. Now, the second part doesn't directly involve you. The budget situation, 2% budget increases at the start, cuts again, 4% decrease, possible total decrease approaching $1 million. That's a big deal. And I ask a question, where is the press and where is the various media? I think with the exception of the young reporters from Channel 9 who've been at the fire department several times, where are the reporters, general reporters, investigative reporters, seeking information, asking questions, interviewing people, and then presenting information that the public can digest? It doesn't seem as though they're out there. Now, I don't know what the reason is. Are we in a news vacuum? Our local newspaper that has Marshfield on the heading doesn't seem to cover us, with the exception of restaurant inspections, perhaps sports. The public's been more or less denied some good information about what's going on here. I would hate to count up the number of rumors that various council members have had and how many telephone calls that are not fact-based. So to the media that's out there, just ask one question: where have you been? Thank you very much, and I wish you luck tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Panker. And our third is Stephen Steingraber.
Good evening. I'm Stephen Steingerber from 1208 East 6th Street, Marshfield. As I did last session, I will again offer a prayer because this is too important an occasion to not go through with both hands present. Lord God of heaven and earth, please bless this, your common council of the city of Marshfield. Give them wisdom and forbearance as they decide these matters, and above all, bring peace to the city and to this group with the final decisions. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none, move on to item D, continue review and consideration of the recommended 2023 budget. Tom Whistle, Chairman of the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, presiding.
Good evening. Letter E on the agenda is the request to approve certain changes to the recommended 2023 budget, incorporating finance staff adjustments outside of the council-directed list of possible general fund budget cuts. This is presented by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director. Jennifer.
Good evening. Where we will start with our budget in the process of approving the budget is with those items that became known to us after the publication of your book that would be material to the budget. These items are listed, they were sent out in an email. Rebecca, you should have received a file with some PDFs. We're working off the file that reads general fund. Items on this list are the result of information received subsequent to the publication of the book. On this list are total net increase in expenditures of $16,228, divided out between our PEP plan and property insurance. And then we also have a general fund increase in revenue due to the rescinded tax form that we just received on Tuesday, increasing our revenue by $24,398 for a net increase on the general fund balance of $8,171. That would be the first item. The other item we can look at would be the file titled changes to other funds. There is one item on here, the very first one in the taxi fund, that would be dependent upon action that you may take on the council directed list of potential cuts. So I would like to hold off on this piece just because of that item. So if you wanted to address the $8,171 increase in general fund balance to begin with, we can revisit this other page at the end.
Is that everything?
To start with.
Okay, so for letter E, we're now reviewing those items that were just presented. And the recommended action is to approve the changes as presented.
Correct.
Just for a quick clarification, that 8,000 is additional money that would be pulled from the fund balance.
This would be increasing our fund balance. So we have expenditures, and then we have expenditures of 16,000, revenue of 24. So we have a net gain.
Okay,
or
so
increase
it actually is reducing the impact on the.
Correct.
Okay.
By $8,171.
Just wanted to make sure we had clarification on that.
Okay.
All right, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to ask Jennifer. Jennifer, is it appropriate to get a motion to accept that change?
It is appropriate. These items were not included in your budget, so in order to.
All right, so I'll make the motion to accept the change as presented.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Wagner to present those changes as recommended, and I see a second by Mr. Fisher. Any questions or discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. You can use your fancy electronic device for voting today.
Yes.
And that passes 8-1 with Mr. Fire voting against.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is letter F, council discussion of possible changes to the recommended 2023 budget, including those items on the list of possible cuts presented at last meeting on November 8th. It's presented by me, but I don't think I really need to present anything. So at this time, rather than go around the room, I will go ahead and ask if anybody has questions, comments, action they wish to take You've all had a chance to mull this over for the last 48 hours, so I'll open the floor for any discussion. Mr. Fire.
Yeah, I've had a busy week, Veterans Week, but I had a chance to talk to a few people. I talked to some people out at the town of McMillan, and their concern is, what is their response time for an ambulance coming out their way, the way we're cutting 3 firefighters, blah, blah, blah. And I honestly didn't have an answer. I couldn't tell them how long it was going to take and what the ramifications of this whole situation was. Today, I had an ADRC meeting, and I was in an executive committee meeting, and there was 2 persons from 2 different counties asked why we were cutting firefighter and public safety funds in a time like this, and I honestly couldn't give them the right answers. So somebody should give me some answers because I could answer the questions they had. And the people from McMillan said they don't have an ambulance, and they're not going to buy one because, they first off, they maybe would hire one of our firefighters to operate it.
Chief Luddy, do you want to comment on that? And I don't know if anybody in the booth can fix our display up here. I do not have any visual on. There you go. Thank you.
So for the first question is, yeah, we are operating 3 personnel short. It's greatly affecting our overtime. We do keep a minimum staff in the station to respond to all calls. However, being 3 short, that obviously is 3 less people that can respond back into the station. So for our contracted areas, we are still maintaining an ambulance as much as we possibly can to respond to those locations. But what people need to realize is our call volume is up about 20%, and we've cut 3 people. We're kind of moving backwards at this point. So we're doing our best to keep up with the call volume, but again, we do try to maintain an ambulance in the station with personnel ready to respond to not only the city, but our contracted areas as well. And your second question, I forgot what that one was. Can you restate that?
Somebody from Langley and Lincoln were talking about, it's on the air. Everybody knows that we have a problem with public safety in the city of Marshfield. It's a known fact. And their question was, how are you going to maintain what you've been maintaining with cutting people? And I said, well, it's your guess as good as mine.
It's a difficult situation to be sure. I plotted our call volume out on a map, or on a graph, and it shows our call volume from, I think, beginning about 2008 or 2007, spiking 41% over that period of time. In 2009, we did move from 10 firefighters on a shift to 11 firefighters on a shift. Again, in 2020, we moved to 12 on a shift because you could see that spike happening, and now we've decreased our staffing again. So we've got lines going in 2 different directions. Our call volume's going up like this, and our staffing is going down, which doesn't seem like a good situation to me.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner?
I was not going, I'm not, I had requested permission to speak before Mr. Fire brought that up. I'm not going to add anything to his conversation. I want to talk about something that I am concerned about in the budget, and that is there was talk, I don't know if we actually cut out of the budget. I don't know if we cut out the city's contribution to the employees' HSAs, health savings accounts. I've been troubled by this because I do feel that this was a deal that we made with our employees to come and work here, and I don't feel that we should be cutting it out. So if it is, can anybody tell me, is it in the budget now, or is it up on the chopping block?
I will remind the council that the items that were listed that we received 2 days ago, no action was taken on any of those items. That was one of those items, so that item is still in the budget. We have not taken action to remove those items that were presented 2 days ago. So.
In that case, I would make a separate motion to leave the contributions to the HSA for the employees as they are.
Okay, it's still in the budget, so you're
Right,
essentially
leave them
making a
in the
motion
budget.
to not do anything with that. That's fine.
I am telling you, keep your hands off it.
So we have a motion to keep our hands off the HSA contribution by Mr. Wagner, and that's seconded by Mr. Varsho. Any questions or discussion on that action? Mrs. Tompkins?
Can we be reminded how much that is total, and also what the contribution is for individual and family?
So I apologize, I don't have the actual total. I think it's around 160,000. I know,
Well, that's the number you gave me, yes.
it's 135,200 in the general fund. So $135,204 in the general fund.
And it's $600 single, 1,200 family is the contribution made annually.
And for clarification, is that an exact amount, or is that an estimate based on what we think people might take?
That is based on everybody's actual tabulated taking of the HSA this previous year. And we would assume that any vacant positions would also take the highest plan because we don't want to be left short. So we always make sure that any vacancies that are inside the budget, so vacant positions that are not being cut, they would also take the family, which is 1,200.
So then what you're saying is this would be the maximum based on last year's participation, or this year's participation?
Correct, based on this year's participation.
Thank you. Mrs. Tompkins, do you have anything else? Anybody else? Mrs. Spiros?
Thank you. I think the HSA contribution is a wonderful benefit. It is an expensive benefit. And, I recall why we went to a high deductible plan. And the reason we went to a high deductible plan was to save in premiums. It saved the city and it saved the employees as far as their monthly premiums went. And when we turned around and then decided to do this HSA savings account, it kind of really didn't benefit us very much to go to a high deductible plan. Any savings we had by switching to a high deductible plan was taken up by donating to these health savings accounts. So, I have very mixed emotions. I like benefits. I do like to give employees benefits. I like to be able to hire people. I like to be able to offer things. But this is a difficult one in this particular budget for me to continue to support.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to say that at the time we went into this, our health insurance consultant, M3, ran the numbers and assured us that these numbers, 600 single, 1,200 family, with the savings and premium, we would do well. We would certainly be saving more than we were providing back in terms of an annual contribution. We haven't tracked this from year to year, although the last couple of years it really hasn't changed. We've been at 3,000, 6,000 with our single and family deductibles. So presumably we're in the same boat. Could we save more for the city if in fact we reduced or eliminated those contributions? Absolutely. But it's not that we're not saving money now from what we were doing before, because we are.
Anything further, Mrs. Spiros? Okay, anybody else? All right, seeing no further discussion on this, we will take a vote on the machines again for preserving this particular item in the budget. The motion is to not touch it, to leave it in the budget and not take it out. And Mrs. Spiros?
No.
Okay, thank you. And that passes 7-2. Other items that people wish to discuss. Mr. Fisher.
So I have some questions, and I don't know who to address this to, so I'm just going to ask the question and then staff can decide who takes this. But for the Safety training. I know that's coming out of a lot of different areas. I heard someone say that that is contracted. Can someone explain to me, I mean, have you reviewed the contract to see that we actually can get out of it, if we can get out of it? I mean, has legal counsel reviewed this? I mean, I'd like to know, are there any financial ramifications if we essentially break contract?
I've not reviewed the contract. I have talked with our representative from MEUW and explained our situation to them. And he just indicated they would work with us with whatever we decide to do. But I did not go as far as evaluating the contract to see if there's some obligation that would be within that contract.
Follow up?
Yes.
Is this the one that Marshfield Utilities is also part of?
Correct. Yep.
Is everyone but Marshfield Utilities coming out of that? Or is
No.
there, okay, so there are still some departments.
Correct. We have 58 employees that are participating in that program, the bulk of them being in wastewater and streets. That's how the program got started. And then we added in parks, engineering, and myself and our facilities person. So what's proposed in the cuts is 20 of those employees would come out, and that cost is about $10,950 for those 20.
Thank you.
Looks like we have another comment.
Yes, I'd just like to make one comment. We were fortunate enough the last 2 years to get audited by the DSPS. And the very first question that she asked us is, where are your safety training records? And through this program, this is all provided for us. And in the past, it was a one-day quick seminar for us and went through everything. Just off the top of my head, this afternoon, I thought, well, what kind of training are they providing for us? And I kind of did a quick note here. We do confined space, competent person training, trench and excavating, traffic control, flagger, work zone safety, SDS reports or SDS safety data sheets for every piece of chemical that we have, either at City Hall, at the garage, over at wastewater, slip and fall protection, ergonomics or proper bending, lifting, twisting, forklift training, fire extinguisher training, emergency action plan, bucket truck safety, fall protection, chainsaw safety, chain and hoist training, work with railroad right away. We actually did a training on that. That was a free one that the Department of the Railroad Administration came in and did for us. And of course, the obvious, the CPR, first aid, AED, and bloodborne pathogens. So I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what we go through and the importance of it when it comes to a safety audit from the state. Thank you.
Mr. O'Reilly.
I think you mentioned there would be 20 people cut from that training. Can we know where or what departments or who that would impact?
Yeah, that was proposed that 10 parks employees would be eliminated from the program, 8 in engineering. Myself, which is probably not critical that I'm in it, but as I mentioned the other night, I'm in it just so I'm aware of what the program is doing for our staff. And then the last one would be our facilities maintenance coordinator, who's out of this building.
Mr. Fisher.
So I'm going to switch gears. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for finance. With the motion that was just passed to make sure that the HSA stayed in the budget, just out of curiosity, if everything else that was recommended was removed, what would the percentage be?
So the question is, if you would maintain the HSA, but remove the rest of the items that were proposed or that were presented on Tuesday, what would we have for us?
It was 4%. I'm just curious what that percentage would be now.
$3.02%.
And if I may follow up then, so if it's 3.02%, what was the number, or what would be the percentage needed to essentially break even? Was that 3.47 that we would needed to balance the budget?
It's around 3.5, but yeah, right now, over on the right-hand side, you see that surplus deficit, that's about 101,000. So that would need to come from some other funding source or some other cut. So the idea is that the ARPA funds in the middle right there are being removed, the fund balance applied, fully removed, and the expense cuts are in that column E. Does that help?
Can you explain what we're seeing on that chart there?
Yeah, so what you're seeing in column B is the original budget that was presented to you in the start of this, this process. In columns C and D, we are trying to remove the ARPA funds and fund balance applied, as was suggested by the council. And then the cuts are in the middle. I've already removed the HSA contribution to that. And then there's the finance suggested corrections, which have been previously motioned and approved upon. Now, the right side is the surplus deficit that exists because of the removal of the funds from ARPA and the fund balance applied.
So then what we're seeing is the 101,000 is the quote surplus, but that would then offset ARPA and
positives or deficits. So you would have more expenses than revenues. And you would need to have some sort of way to balance that if ARPA and fund balance were fully removed.
Okay, okay, thank you. So that total is what's going to come from ARPA and or fund balance, if it's a positive number. Thank you.
Correct.
Mr. Fisher, anything else?
Not at this time.
Mr. Wagner?
Thank you. I have a question, again, about process, Jordan. The balance you're showing, the current balance you're showing, is that the administrator's budget as was presented to us at the last meeting?
Correct. In column B, that was.
In column B is what we've got, and then the 870 that's showing under there is what? That's
rounding from the original budget. We didn't have a completely balanced budget. It was off by 870. It was rounded.
Okay, so basically, and you're saying that we're at right now about, in reductions to the budget, we're at about, what did you say, 2.5%?
3.02.
We're at 3.02 now, and our goal was 4.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'll hold for right now. Thank you.
Mrs. Tompkins?
So this proposed cuts that we have, we've given, Steve, you gave a directive to the fire and the police and said, this is how much you need to take out. Is that right?
Well, the council was not specific on saying it had to be 4% from each department. I actually thought I'd heard that when I was watching the meeting coming back from vacation. That was wrong. You said you wanted 4% in total. So I told them we needed to find 4% in total. I believe I asked them to look to see if they could find 4% in the departments. Certainly, we ended up with like an idea, for example, like HSA, which is cross-departmental. So not every department, cut their budgets by 4%. That was what I was looking for, though, with the hope that, we would be able to make it without other cuts.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wagner?
I think I'm going to probably rip a scab off the wound here. Something that we've been talking about for a long time, and we've been arguing about it a lot, is the school resource officers. And basically, I agree that the school board should be sharing the cost of that with us. That right now we are funding 100% of the cost. The question is, how do we go about that, and what do we do? I think the way we can deal with that, one possibility, is maybe inform the school board that as of September 1st of next year, we were only going to fund 50% of the cost of the resource officer. And then if they wanted, they could either settle for one resource officer, which would be cutting the budget in half, or they could have two if they kicked in 50%. And I think then what we would do, of course, is a corresponding reduction of the cost of the school resource officers by 25% for next year. Or well, it'd actually be half of 25%. It's starting, you know, we would fund them up through August 31st. But after August 31st, we would only fund half that position. I'd like to hear your comments on it. Again, we've argued when Mrs. Spiros' husband was on this council, this was something that drove him to distraction, is the nicest way I can say it. He was very upset about it. He always felt it was that. I remember he was planning on cutting everything out for the school board at one time. He was so angry, but we've never solved this problem. We've never taken an affirmative step to solve this problem. And I'm asking you if you want to do that.
Mrs. Tompkins.
Okay, but my question that I just asked was, it is the prerogative of the police department to decide where they cut, right? So we can't even say we recommend you don't do that. Am I correct in that?
I think the chief is going to step up, but I think it's under the purview of the Police and Fire Commission. Chief, did you want to?
Hi. I guess before we get too involved in it, I am absolutely willing and actually planning to approach the school. I understand that their budgets are on a different cycle than ours are. So to do it at this time, it's not going to have an impact on this budget, but it is on the horizon that our department move forward and approach the schools. There's been varying degrees of commitment from previous chiefs in this area, but the time has come that we need to approach them. I don't want to get into a lot of details as to what those amounts are or anything, because I look at that as something that we can work towards together and find something that's going to be beneficial to both the city and the school district. The benefit of having the SROs in the schools are plenty, and you all know, you all had the news broadcasted in one way or another. So the ultimate decision does fall on the Police and Fire Commission. I work at their discretion. You decide what money is available for us to fund, and we'll go from there. But I just want to make sure that the air is clear in our department that we do plan on approaching the school and having them help us in that area.
Mr. Barg. Thank you. Just adding to what the chief said, I've talked with Ryan Christensen. I think I mentioned that earlier. I can't remember if it was after the first budget meeting or the second budget meeting, because there have been 5 now, but I reached out to him and he was very clear about saying he would be welcome to have people from the school district meet with people from the city of Marshfield and talk about this issue. He does understand that most school districts across the state make contributions financially to those particular programs, and it seemed very open to it. So that doesn't help you for this budget right now if you're looking to implement something for 2023. But my discussion with him was that after this process was over, we would, exactly as Bodie is saying, we would get some of us together and talk about how that might play out and get working on that idea. There was no resistance on his part to having that dialogue at all.
Okay. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and then a question. I don't know if Alderperson Tompkins actually really got her question answered about the procedure. It is my understanding that we can cut funding. We could even make a motion essentially like Alderman Wagner is suggesting about the position. But once the budget is passed, the Fire and Police Commission could reallocate funds. So I just want to make sure that's clearly stated. So what he is suggesting could be done, but the commission at a later time could reallocate those funds. So I felt like that wasn't clearly stated, so I wanted to say that. And then my question, though, is based on what Alderman Wagner is suggesting, if those funds were removed from the budget, how would that change the overall picture?
So I guess the big question is do you want just the police amount out, or do you want the fire department out as well?
No, I'm talking about the position of the school liaison officer.
Oh, the school resource
officer. So if the school resource officer, if that funding was eliminated, like Alderman Wagner is suggesting as a possibility, starting September 1, what would that do?
So let's just go from the basis of the school resource officers combined are about 190,000. Okay.
Say that again.
Both positions are about 190,000. So let's use that as the basis. Now, at what point are we talking about getting X amount of dollars of funding? So I was trying to do kind of some quick math there. At 12.5%, half of 25% of 190,000 is about $23,750. So for the first year, correct? So the 25% of fully would be, the 23.75 times 2, roughly 50,000, close.
Mr. O'Reilly's up next. Mr. O'Reilly's up. Sorry, I'm following the numbers on the board. Got to buzz in faster. Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you. Forgive me for stating the obvious, but I think a lot of people around here have lost faith in the negotiations with our schools. They have absolutely not acknowledged requests to come for multiple things. So at this point, I'm going to just state the obvious that I do not believe that they are going to come and negotiate in good faith. I think it's a smart move to move forward with it now. We need the money, and it's something that should have been done years ago. It will give them time to make the corrections, fit it in their budget. And I completely believe that the Fire and Police Commission are not going to remove funding from theirs for that. I mean, it's just logical. So I will just leave it at there. I think we need to get the ball rolling.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. My intent here was exactly that, get the ball rolling and have a process in place that will, for lack of a better term, force us as well as the school board into a situation where they have to negotiate. That's the reason I'm doing it that way. If you don't want to do it that way, fine. We can argue about it next year too. I don't care. I've been here 14, 15 years, something like that. And this is getting old. It's the same argument every year. And basically it's about time that somebody did something.
Just for clarification, are we just talking about the school resource officer, or are we also talking about the crossing guard? Okay. Micro.
I'm only talking about school resource officers because that's a larger lump sum of money than the school crossing guards.
Yes.
As a point of clarification, which might add to the idea that Mr. Wagner has, the school district goes on a July 1 cycle. So if we were to forecast the possibility of working something out with them, rather than September as suggested, a target date might be July 1 and it might be a bigger number to work with, so.
Thank you. Looks like Mrs. Spiros is up next.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get this straight in my head, what we're trying to do right now. We've already cut the police budget by $125,000, if I'm not mistaken. I guess I sat back and thought their budget's been cut by $125,000. Certainly a place that the Police and Fire Commission will look is going after reimbursement for a school resource office or participation from the school. And I kind of thought that would be part of their $125,000 cut. I mean, I know we don't control them, and even just making comments about this, I still don't think we can control them. All we control is a purse string. So my assumption was that in their $125,000 that they've already been cut, that they would go after the school, and that would seem like a way for them to not feel that hurt so much in their own department. So is the proposal that they would remain at $125,000 cut right now, and that we would be planning on issuing a further cut down the line, whether it be July 1st or September 1st, or one of the two resource officers, which would make us a 50% contributor to that? Or was the expectation that it was going to come out of their $125,000 or $150,000 that we already proposed cutting?
Technically,
we're trying to get clarification.
Yep. Technically, we are not.
Well, I know we haven't cut anything, but what is proposed?
Okay.
I mean, is what I'm saying is this an additional proposal that will come in 6 months from now? Or was this just something that everyone kind of thought that they would go after with the proposed cuts that are on there now?
Anybody want to try to answer that? Mr. Wagner, since you brought
Yeah, I would
up the
ask
topic.
Mr. Barg to address that question about with the mechanics of it, as far as the amount that's already been proposed to be cut from the way I see it, basically they would get a credit of the 1/4 of 1/2 or something like that, if it was passed this way.
But yeah, I mean,
it would show as
you could look at it any way you want to. It'll show up on the books as an offsetting revenue, as opposed to the expense cut would still be whatever it is, 125 or some other number. But taken as a whole, the impact on the budget would be mitigated by whatever revenue came from the school district agreement. I want to throw one more thing, if I can, real quickly too, and that is that, talk about how we haven't gotten to this point in the past. I've been here 12 of those years when people have probably been thinking, can we get to the finish line and maybe getting some contribution from the school district. Until now, we really haven't had a police chief talking about an openness, and I think the reason is, and I think Chief Goering is guardedly so, there's always been the concern about we need to have control of that officer. We don't want the school superintendent or somebody else trying to dictate what that person does on a given day. And I think the idea is that other districts do this. There's obviously some way to put it in place, whether it's in writing or otherwise, that whatever contribution the school district makes, it's not going to be buying them control over that officer's daily activities. So I think that there's a better push on our side perhaps now to get that conversation going in a more meaningful way.
I think it is important to understand, though, that the contribution from the district would be revenue. It's not exactly a cut. It's just money paid back for a service.
It'd be an offsetting revenue. Their budget would still be shown as cut, whatever number you have, but 25, 50, some $1,000s, whatever, based upon the length of time that the school district is paying, would be shown as a revenue. Not specifically tied to them, but it would come into the city as general revenue. But obviously, you know what you know, and that is that you'd be lessening the cut per se.
Bunch of people took their names off. Mrs. Tompkins?
Okay, so first of all, Mrs. Spiros asked a clarifying question about what's being said. And so I think I hear that you guys just said that the police will still, at the moment, the plan is they'll still have 125,000 taken out of their budget, but if they negotiate with the school district, they might receive some revenue. That's what I'm hearing. Am I correct? Am I not right? Okay, we need to clarify what was just said then.
My understanding is that if the presented cuts went through as presented on Tuesday, that is a $125,000 cut from the budget. If the school district pays a share of whatever entity, whatever service that we're providing, that would just go into the general budget. It would not affect the $125,000 proposed or potential cut to that budget.
It would sort of be wink, wink, nod, nod. The net effect was not 125, it was some other number, but their budget would still show expenses $125,000 less than proposed.
Now, if you, I guess, wanted to take that into consideration and consider, well, let's say that they are going to pay, and we're going to let the Police and Fire Commission have that money, then we could change the $125,000 to reflect whatever amount we would expect to come back from the district. But that's my understanding of how things are playing out right. Others, Mrs. Tompkins.
I feel like we need to grapple with the fact that, how do I say this? I think we really need to face the fact that we have an EMS and a firefighting service that has so much volume and they don't have enough people. I think we can't ignore that. I don't know what the solution is, but I think we need to sort of see if we can get creative or something because, first of all, I just want to say, Chief Fletty, when you stood up here 2 days ago and said, I can find 14,000, like that, wow. That was just so much integrity. And that just showed so much leadership that you could stand up and say, I know this is what's going to hurt, but I can say that. And I just appreciate that honesty, but that integrity. I don't know if anyone has any ideas, but I really feel like we need to somehow adequately staff the fire. I don't know how many of you have ever ridden in an ambulance or had a family member ridden in an ambulance, but it's just a real essential service. So if anyone has any ideas, I'm bringing it to the floor.
Mr. O'Reilly.
I think the suggestion of splitting the cost for the resource officers, is there a way that we can take this and figure in the cut and then figure in that this expense or this cut to their budget could be reinstated in the amount of one resource officer on July 1st? To basically acknowledge the monies that will be coming in so that they would automatically get this money back into their account, which would help with exactly what Alderperson Tompkins had mentioned. I think we all want to get the money in for EMS. It's obviously an extremely important part of our community, but we're limited. And I see this as a very positive way to get some back in there, albeit it would be a while, but we could acknowledge it in that way, I would think. Thank you.
What would be the potential cost share from the district for that one resource officer for half a year?
So at what percentage? 25, 50,
so
75?
Let's hope for the best. Let's say the district agrees to pay half of the cost of the resource officers for half a year.
Okay, so I mean, half of the cost for half the year?
For half the year because it's July 1 according to the calendar that they have.
Yeah,
I'm
no, I was
guessing
going to
about
say it was going to be
48,000.
the 23,750 times 2. I mean, that was going to be around 47,000.
So then what I think Mr. O'Reilly was suggesting was change the 125,000 proposed reduction in the budget by that amount.
By 47.5. So that would be 47,500 reduction to the 125,000 cut.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, you're up next.
I keep pushing this button on and off. I don't know if I want to talk or not. This is, and I've said this, I think at every meeting, this is, I don't think anybody likes this, but we're in a financial crisis in the sense that we keep taking money from our fund balance to balance the budget. And I don't think we can keep doing that long term. So something needs to change. And I keep looking back at that $101,734. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the number right now that if we want to balance this budget, that has to get to zero. And we're not there. And I am not saying it should go to zero, but I just want to remind everybody, we don't leave here tonight until we decide two things, in my opinion. One, do we want that to go to zero? And two, if we don't want it to go to zero, what are we content borrowing from? Is that ARPA? Is that, as we've been affectionately calling it, our savings account? What are we going to do? And I think the bigger question is, how are we going to operate the city knowing the constraints the state of Wisconsin has put us under? And those are big questions, and it's 7:59 and we have 3 hours, 4 hours. I'm losing track, it's late. We have 4 hours to approve a budget. So I guess I want to just bring it back to two questions. Do we want that to go to zero? Question one. Question two is, are we going to, if it's not going to be zero, what are we approving tonight?
Mrs. Tompkins.
So I'm just clarifying again. When Mr. O'Reilly said take the money from the resource officer and put it back into their fund, were you talking about putting it back into the police fund, or were you saying put it into fire so that they could use it for EMS or firefighters?
I was saying put it back into the police fund because ultimately that's where it's coming out of. But I'm open to any suggestions. Just a thought.
Do I still have the floor?
Yes, you do.
Can I make a motion that we can all discuss? Can I make a motion that money, you want to keep it in the general fund, no? I'm going to make the motion, we can discuss it, that the money that is saved with the school resource officers gets put into fire prevention, which I hope eventually goes down to EMS. But that's my motion, that it gets put into the fire prevention fund.
For clarification, and I don't know if Mr. Barg answered this or not, but when the city gives money to the PFC to run those two departments, is it allocated this amount for this and that amount for that? Or is it a lump sum that says, here you go, all protective services, you divvy it out?
They present a budget, and it's a line item budget, and I meet with them and talk to them about reductions, and we generally look at it that way. Having said that, I talked to the city attorney before I proposed the blanket cuts of $125,000 to police and $50,000 to fire back on Tuesday night, and asked about that versus me actually taking out a red pen and trying to mark off things I would eliminate. And the understanding is, if I just pick a number, that clearly gives them discretion as to what to do with it. But going to your broader question, I think within reason, they can certainly change things to fit the needs. I mean, it's certainly possible for them to see that they need to spend more here and less here during the calendar year that the budget was approved for. Even though it's clearly their stated intent to do certain things, and we track whether or not those things are happening. If they came back in the next budget and said, hey, we still need to do this, why didn't you do that with last year's allocation? Well, whatever. So, I mean, it's going to affect how you look at the next year budget, what they did with the previous year, and they know that. You've got fiscal scrutiny, but there is some discretion for them.
Wagner, do you have a question?
Mr. Witzel, we do have a motion on the table,
Yes, we
so we
do.
should get a second before we have more discussion.
Okay, good point. Motion on the table to reallocate monies to fire prevention, potentially EMS. In seconds. The motion dies for a lack of a second. Mr. Wagner.
The last number we had to use in this consideration was that the average cost of hiring and standing up an additional firefighter / EMT is $103,000 per person. I see the chief shaking his head, so that's still a good number. That's as good of a guess as we can get. To rehire those 3 firefighters would be $309,000. And take a look at the scoreboard. Where is it? I can't find it. If you can find it, I'll be the first one to jump on and second or even make a motion to hire the 3 firefighters back. But I don't see it. I can't find it. It's painful. When we go through this kabuki dance every few years too, that we say, okay, we're going to have we're going to put on 1, 2, 3 more firefighters, and because we're expecting this revenue to come in, and some brilliant member of the council will always say, aha, what if you don't get that revenue? And what do you guys tell us? We'll just lay them off. We know, you know, and we know you're never going to do that. This is the case where we've got 3 firefighters. These aren't guys who have been laid off. These are guys who have either retired or left the department, the 3 vacancies we've got now. At least that's my understanding of it. So the point is we are not disadvantaging anybody right now we are not depriving somebody of a job that they were hired to do. But that doesn't change the fact that I can't find the money. You have no idea how painful it is to hear the pleas, to know that those pleas have import. They are important, we know that. But not being able to do anything about it is pure, unadulterated torture.
Mr. Fire.
Having served 14 years in the county in public safety, dealing with the sheriff's department and what are all things we had to do, we never cut employees. My biggest problem with this, and I can honestly tell you that at the end of the evening, I'm probably going to vote against this budget. I have never in 22 years ever voted against the budget. I think our biggest problem is you're putting a number on what a life is worth. That's my way of looking at public safety. I don't care if it's in the police department or the fire department. If you don't have the proper personnel to manage your department, you are putting lives in danger. So I can guarantee, no matter how you do this, I'm not going to vote for this budget.
Do we have anybody that fully grasps? Just a second. Do we have anybody who fully grasps parliamentary process and what my abilities are to speak from this podium?
Yeah, you can ask permission from the body to speak.
Yeah, typically, a person who is chairing a meeting would be expected to, if you're going to make more than just limited comments, to step aside, hand the gavel to somebody else during your comments, and then step back up.
So I can step down,
yes,
comment, and then
find somebody to replace you for that time period.
It was my understanding that once I step down, until the matter is resolved, I'm off.
No, you're still presiding in the meeting as a whole.
Okay, thank you, because I'm biting my tongue like crazy. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what Alderman Wagner said, and I do want to echo a part of what he said because I think it's important. I've lost a lot of sleep over all of these cuts, not just the public safety portion, all of these cuts. It's not enjoyable to think about cutting services, cutting anything that will actually benefit the city and the citizens who live here. So this has been very painful for me. Even in the last 48 hours, receiving 4 phone calls, 2 people saying make cuts, 2 people saying don't make cuts, you're left going, what do I do? But at the end of the day, one thing I really do believe is 2 things, I guess I really believe. We have a financial crisis, and I'm not trying to overplay this, but I also don't want to downplay it. We have a financial crisis that we have to solve. And yet, I do appreciate what Chief Floody said about the fact that the call volume is going up, your personnel is going down. I think I had a call with one of the deputy chiefs a couple of weeks ago saying if I could find a way to bring those positions back, I would move heaven and earth to do that. And I stand by that statement. When I went to the league, and I know many of my colleagues, we all, I think, sat through that session on EMS, public safety. When I first heard the presenter say a public safety referendum, I cringed because I deeply wanted to believe the EMS fund could, in an ideal world, pay for itself. And there's still a part of me that deeply wants to believe that. But after more and more consideration, this city exists at the pleasure of its citizens. And I think there will be no better way to solve this by letting the citizens speak. And so I think at some point, what we need to do, to get to your point, Alderwoman Tompkins, is to get creative. We, I think, are going to have a referendum go before the city, asking the city to speak to what kind of service do they want coming from their public safety. And if the answer is they want those 3 firefighters back, if they want EMS to be funded out of the general fund, that will be, I think, our marching orders. And so in one sense, I think we need to at some point go to a referendum. But here and now, again, the here and now, we have a crisis. And the crisis is we keep borrowing money from our reserves. And we have to determine how we want to operate. I'm not suggesting we go to 0, but I am simply suggesting I think we need to come to a consensus. We were elected by the constituents to make decisions. We're going to have to own those decisions. And in a year or 2 years from now, if they don't like our decisions, they rightfully so can remove us from office. And right now we are tasked with that hard decision to go, are we going to approve it as is with a $101,734 shortfall, or are we going to make additional cuts to try and get that closer to 0?
Mr. Wagner.
I think Mr. Barr might know the answer to this. I'm like Mr. Fisher in the sense that I do not like referendums. They always have a way of turning the community against itself. But I'm beginning to see that the only way in the entire state that that they've been able to fund the true cost of EMS is asking for a referendum and asking the citizens. Now, I'll tell you what a referendum does. It says, it doesn't say we can borrow more money. The referendum says the citizens are allowing us to raise X amount raise so many mills of value to pay for those costs. Now, the problem is, and this is where Mr. Bard comes in, I think we can only do that at budget time. I don't think we can do that. If we can do it in April, I'll give in to that. But if I don't know if you know the answer to that?
Yeah, I think Jessica has helped us on this. The earliest we could do it would be in connection with the spring primary election. We'd have to move along rather expeditiously to get that process rolling, but we could certainly put this out for referendum. If I can real briefly add to this too, this may not be comforting, but if you saw in the bulletin I sent out today from the league, or maybe some of you get it directly, on Tuesday night, I believe there were 37 communities in Wisconsin that had referendums for public safety. 17 of them passed, and slightly more than half failed. What that does tell us is that we're not alone. And like I said, I'm not sure if that provides a lot of comfort, but it does show that the depth of problem is way beyond us in terms of trying to finance some of these operations. Anyway, going back to your question, it would be the spring primary, would be the early.
We could do it we don't have to wait till budget season to do it. I really hate to do that, but because it's a crapshoot whether or not the citizens will do it or not. But I told them I couldn't find any other way. Well, here's a way. It ain't pretty, but it's a way. And I don't know what we need to do is to say, leave the fire department budget as it is, missing the 3 firefighters now, but go commit the council to going to a referendum in April. Do we have a motion on the floor? Is there?
No, there's no motion on the floor, and I'm not sure if we can actually vote on a referendum.
That'd yield to Mr. Fisher if he wanted to do that.
Okay, go ahead.
If you wanted to go the route of a referendum, you would need to do that in the form of a resolution. The latest date to pass that resolution would be your first council meeting in January, because then we do have a 70-day notice to each of the county clerks. So by the first meeting in January, you would need to pass a resolution directing referendum.
Okay.
No later than your first meeting in January.
We'd be looking at doing this in December, probably. I don't know if we can do that if it's not noticed on the agenda or not. I don't know if it's directly related to budget and therefore we can, or I don't know the legality of that. Thank you. Yeah. Our clerk is saying she doesn't feel comfortable since it's not been noticed to discuss.
I can take this as if there's a general consensus.
It's a budgetary matter.
I can take this as a general consensus to put this on the next agenda for discussion.
I think it needs to be on the next
agenda
body's
for discussion.
Whatever way you want to do it.
Mr. Fisher?
I was just going to say what actually Mr. Bark said. I think just a consensus to have it at the next meeting would be good. So.
Mrs. Spiros?
Thank you. So we're getting, I'm trying to get back to the budget at hand, because there's a lot of things that we could and maybe can do in the future, but we still have to deal with this budget today. And as far as the referendum goes, I mean, that does put the choice into the people's hands, but I believe that Mr. Barg said that more than half of the communities that just voted it down. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. People voted it down. Why did they vote it down? Everybody wants their communities to be safe. I would say most people probably voted it down because they are cash strapped, just like we are. And so getting back to the original budget, if we can move on and determine what number people are comfortable with in that 101,734. Personally, I'd like to see that get as close to zero as possible.
Mrs. Tompkins?
So if we pass or motion for the school resource officers to be paid for half, partially paid for, take that money, put it in the general fund, is that the 47,500 that's there?
That is correct, but just be noted, I feel very uncomfortable putting revenue inside of a budget that we do not have a contract for. So yes, it would, at this point, what I'm thinking is we would end up utilizing the fund balance applied for that. And then if we get a contract, we would do a budget resolution, take the amount for fund balance applied out of the budget, and then put the revenue in for it.
Mr. Fisher?
I was trying to look through this. I recall the assistant city planner was eliminated, but it was just a partial elimination, correct? It wasn't for the full year?
No, but we have that position not being refilled for all of 2023.
All of 2023.
Correct. At a savings of, I think, about $88,000 in benefits. And that's based in part, as I may have mentioned at the last meeting, that we may be looking at some ideas for restructuring during the time period. We've had a real hard time finding candidates for that, but we think there's opportunities to discuss.
Okay. Mr. Wagner?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful to as a process to sort of not speed things up, but to put things in the right context, to put a motion to accept the administrator's budget as presented or as amended now, and then basically everything all the debate would be to amend that, to take this or that or the other thing out. Would that be more helpful?
So you're proposing that we
put a motion on the floor to accept the city administrator's budget as presented.
With that as our starting point?
Yeah.
And then any action that goes beyond that would address the items that were presented 2 days ago?
Yeah, we already passed the school resource thing, so maybe we should say we didn't
take action on that. No.
What's that? Oh, sorry. The health service account was the one I should have.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's actually.
So basically we have to say as amended, right?
Well, this is a unique situation. We were presented a budget a month ago or so. I forget the dates exactly. Beginning of the budget process, we were presented a budget. We've amended that budget based on action that we took earlier today, based on new information that we've received since that budget was published initially to us a month ago. 2 days ago, we received this list of potential cuts that would essentially remove the utilization of any ARPA and or fund balance applied to the budget.
Right.
So
and that's what's up on the screen now.
Yep, essentially saying we only want to spend money that we're getting, so we don't tap into our savings account, so to speak, or utilize those ARPA funds. So I guess what I'm waiting for is somebody to say, let's just pass the budget as it was presented a month ago. And if it fails, then we go on to the next thing. And somebody says, let's cut this out of the budget based on this or something else in their hat. And then we start, I guess, whittling away at what we have. Again, I have so many things running through my head that I'd really like to speak, and I'm just sitting and biting my tongue because I don't really know how to approach that. Mrs. Tompkins.
Can you give your gavel to our council president and then you can speak?
I think it has to be a decision of the body as to who steps in and
can you ask?
covers. And it might be a little while because I have a lot to say.
Do we have to make a motion for you to step down?
Does anybody wish to step in and handle matters for a moment?
We need a 5-minute reset.
You want a 5-minute recess? Is that what you said?
No.
I would agree you need to speak. I would propose someone who understands the procedure to take your gavel.
Is there any reason why the mayor can't? No? Madam Mayor, you want to step in for a moment? I'm going to push the button.
Which one's your? Alderman Witzel?
Thank you. Where does the fund balance sit if the budget were passed as it had been proposed a month ago?
So our ending fund balance at the end of 21 would have been approximately $4.5 million. So subtract off roughly 400 from that. So all other things being equal, fund balance, meaning all revenues materialized, all other expenses coming in as budgeted, we would be sitting around 4.1 of unassigned fund balance.
Unassigned.
Correct.
Okay. I voted when the motion was made to propose or to find 4% cuts. I voted for that because I feel there's some concern about the fund balance continuing to dwindle. I've been in this seat for only 6 years. I haven't had the history that some of my other colleagues have had, but I've been here for 6 years, and I watched the fund balance go up and down more than up. Part of that had to do with financing, which is why I really am a proponent for an audit committee, but that's a whole other topic. We're not bankrupt.
No.
We're not worried about, oh my goodness, we're going to have to put a for sales line on City Hall because we have no money. I mean, it's not, yes, we're in a bit of a crisis. I understand that, but it's not to the level of dire concern that I feel this cloud over this body is facing right now. We could pass the budget as it had been proposed and be fine. We could pass the budget as it had been proposed and add a couple firefighters. We'd still, we're cutting it even tighter, but we could do it. We have the money. The concern is how often and how much from the savings account can we continue to do? I'm sorry, the phrase I'm going to use belittles the incredible work that the staff have done over the last 10 days. But I don't really know how else to phrase this. The exercise of putting together this list of potentially 900 and some odd $1,000 proved to me, and which is why I wanted this done, it proved to me that there was not fat in the budget. And as I had mentioned 2 days ago, what I was really hoping for is that I would see this and I would say, there's the silver bullet. If we just do this, then everything's great. Everybody's happy. We don't borrow any from here. We get our firefighters back. We do all of this wonderful stuff. I didn't see that silver bullet. Again, the work that the incredible long hours and intense work that the staff put together to say, we can save $40 if we take out this amount of money here. And we can save $150 if we drop this here. And we can save, I don't know. It's like nickel and dime. I can save a nickel if I buy a generic pen. I cannot agree to the cuts that were brought forth. I'm with Mr. Fire. I cannot agree to $900,000 worth of cuts. I know we have to tap into our savings account. I know that I have colleagues that are on this council that say, let's get the 101 down to zero. I can appreciate that. But I also am very concerned with the services that we're tasked with presenting for this city. And first and foremost,
our public safety. And I feel, and I know Mr. Wagner says I can't find the money. I feel we need to find the money. We need to find the money. We need to get those firefighters back in. I also want to go so far as to say, if we don't buy that ambulance, we're leaving money on the table. Because if I understand correctly, between grants and other funding, we're potentially saving 35% on an ambulance if we buy it now, utilizing those grant monies that are available. I understand that those 3 firefighters and that ambulance are EMS fund items, and we don't have any money in the EMS fund. So let's figure out a different way to fund it. Let's get those firefighters out of EMS, get them back on in the staff so that our staff don't burn out. We're borrowing potentially money from the fund balance applied. We're utilizing fund balance money. If, and I don't know if these things would work or not, if we don't refill an associate planner position, if we don't refill, and I don't know what the retirement plans are for the assistant chief, but if we don't refill that position, that's money that, as far as I can tell, would fund 2 firefighters. If we can get some money from the school district to pay for some of the resource officers, that would fund half of an officer, half of a firefighter EMT. If we can borrow for squad cars, why can't we borrow for an ambulance? These are all the things that have been rolling around in my head for days. I don't know where to take it. I cannot see cutting $900,000 from the budget. I'm sorry. I just cannot vote for doing that. We have to borrow money. We're locked in because our net new construction, based on how much we built and how much was taken off the tax rolls, is razor thin. Therefore, our tax levy can be only razor thin. I fear for the day when more money comes off the tax roll for some other entity that says we're also tax exempt, and how much thinner our potential tax money can be in that situation. And I don't like to raise taxes. I've cringed every time we've had to raise taxes. I'll yield for now. I see Mrs. Spiros has her hand up, and I'm sure she's going to argue with me, but I just have to get some of this stuff off my mind.
And actually, Alderman Wagner was raised first, or do you want Mrs. Spiros? Okay, Mrs. Spiros?
I'm going to ask if Jordan can take that down off the screen, because that's the only thing I can see. I can't see anybody in the meeting, and that's a little distracting. Thank you. Tom, I hear your passion. I think we all have that passion, but I'm going to pose to you, where is the money? This is the question. Everybody can sit up there and say we need protective services. Of course we do, but there's just no money. That's the bottom line. That's the question. Where is the money? We'd all like to give them 6 firefighters if we could. There's no money. Cuts have to be made. And the entity that's going to possibly win their lawsuit against us, that is millions of dollars that we will owe them. It is not just going forward from the time they win. If they win, we could owe them in the millions of dollars. Boom. There goes our savings account. Or our other choice is that we borrow to run our operations. At the point where you start borrowing to run your operations of your city, you are in big trouble. And I am just sitting here baffled at the fact that we all want to include all this stuff back into the budget. Of course we do, but no one is coming up with the money to do it. And $4.1 million in our savings at the end of this budget is not a very good amount of money. I'm sorry. You see, it went down $400,000 this year. And I mean, that just keeps dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. Without any revenue, you cannot continue to spend what we're spending. That's just the fact of the matter. If this were your budget at home, you'd have to get a second job. So while I understand the passion, I'm in healthcare. I understand burnout. I get it. I wish we could get those firefighters back. But wishing doesn't produce money to pay for them. So where is the money? So if everybody wants to sit around and propose that we put all this stuff back into the budget, the next comment that you have after you say you want to put it back is tell us where you're going to find the money to pay for it. And I think that's just how we have to handle it from going forward, because I'm hearing so many suggestions to continue to spend and no extra money coming in. And for that reason, I can't pass this budget.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you. I share Mr. Wetzel's passion about this. I think I've expressed that. I'm looking down the road, and I know that Tom did allude to it, and I know Becky just mentioned it also. We have 2 separate lawsuits pending against us by one of our major industries in town, or it happens to be a medical industry, that want a refund of the taxes for 2000, I think it was the year 2001 and the year 2000 and 2001, and soon, I think after the next tax bill goes out, it could be they could file an additional suit for the return of the 3rd year. Mrs. Spiros is right, that's millions of dollars. The worst case scenario is $3 million out of a $4.1 million fund reserve. That's not an emergency? That's not a contingency we have to plan for? It most certainly is. I've offered one solution, what I consider to be a compromise, and that was the compromise of a referendum. And I'll tell you, that's the only place I see the money coming from, and that's money that we can levy, that we don't have to borrow anything. We can leave our reserve fund there in case the clinic or whoever it is that's suing us, whoever is suing us prevails. And one of the likely outcomes is a compromise of maybe we're not going to kill you, we're just going to hurt you just a little bit. Maybe that's one of the things that'll come out of it, I don't know. But at the meantime, I would suggest that basically let's start with what was the date of the last council meeting? The days have been running together in a blur for me here. That was today is what, the 10th, 9th, 8th. So this was given to us on November 8th, and basically, I'll make a motion to approve the budget as amended that was submitted on November 8th. So what will happen now, if you want something back in, make a motion and put it back in.
So if I understand correctly, and
So I'll make that as a form of a motion.
I'm giving up my opportunity to talk now. So the motion that you're making, if I can get a good clarification on this, is to pass the budget, which includes all of these cuts
up to the
minus the HSA.
This line here, it's it includes those cuts.
So we have a motion to pass the budget with 900.
That's that budget, yeah.
With these budget cuts, without the HSA
right
in there.
Right.
Do I have a second for that motion?
For clarification, you did already today adopt some changes that the finance director presented.
Yep, those are also part of it. Right? The changes that we took action on earlier today, those are a part of your budget.
Yeah. And not just the HSA, but the other staff corrections.
Right. Yep, so.
That's right.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the budget as it was presented a month ago with the changes that were approved today, plus the deduction of all of the items that were brought forth on the 8th, without the HSA being removed. Do I have a second for that? We have a second by Mr. Fisher. Questions and discussion? Mrs. Tompkins.
I feel like all my questions are clarifying. Didn't we just vote that we weren't going to remove the HSA?
Right. So what I'm saying is what was presented to us to begin with, that budget, plus the changes that we approved now, plus all of these cuts. So we're going to remove all of these cuts except for the HSA that we've already taken action to not cut.
Okay.
That's what we're voting on. So essentially the budget will be $101,000 of ARPA and or fund balance applied to pay for whatever we're going to actually do this next year. Any questions or discussion? All right, vote. Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
That passes 5-4. So without any further action, what we would have is the budget with the extra $900 or I guess now $800,000 removed. And 101,000 either from ARPA and or fund balance applied that cover the additional.
You need 7 votes to pass a budget resolution. You do not need 7 votes to pass the initial budget.
You would need 7 votes at the meeting when the public hearing is held on November 30th. At that time, you would need 7 votes to pass the budget.
Is that? So I think actually what we're technically doing right now is we're passing the publication of the budget that we will then vote on once the public has a hearing.
That's true, because it was a couple of years ago, Mayor McManus actually broke a tie at 5-5 to pass the budget. I apologize. Is it?
It's 5-4. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like some clarification with that 800,000. What are we directing staff? Where are we directing staff to take that from?
The cuts that were presented are now active.
Well, excuse me, the 101,000. I misspoke.
You want to know where that money is coming out of?
Yeah, where's that coming out of? Is that coming out of fund balance? Is that coming out of ARPA? And I'm being a bit sarcastic here. Obviously, they don't know, so we have to give them some direction, I feel like.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion. A budget resolution takes 7 affirmative votes, but passing the budget only takes a simple majority. And as I recall, while we were talking, 2 years ago, I believe it was, Mayor McManus actually broke a 5-5 tie in favor of a budget after the public hearing. So it's a simple majority. Later on, if you get into calendar year 2023 and you want to change it, that would require the supermajority.
What we're wondering though is where is the money coming from that because we're $101,000 off of the break even.
So if I may follow up, I'd like to ask a question. How much money do we have in ARPA again?
Our total receipts of ARPA were $1.9 million. In 2022, we allocated $1,084,000 of those dollars to be spent on projects which are currently in flight. For 2023, we had also planned to allocate projects in totaling $608,000. And then for 2025, we were going to allocate another $125,000 for another project. The money, the $435,000 that you see as being reallocated from ARPA were initially allocated to the Lincoln Avenue extension from Ives to McMillan for $335,000. I believe we've deemed that project to either be delayed or postponed indefinitely. And then the other portion, the 100,000, was for a affordable housing program that was a placeholder. We currently have no program in place. And it was that money had been set aside to do that. So if you choose to not use ARPA to balance the budget, those could go back towards the affordable housing program, or the Lincoln Avenue project could come back on the table, or whatever you choose at whatever time.
All right, if I may follow up, I'm going to make a motion that we take $101,734 from ARPA. That is my motion.
We have a motion to use $101,734 of ARPA money to fund the monies of the budget as it's been currently passed. And I have a second by Mr. O'Reilly. Questions and discussion? Yes.
I got to ask Jennifer at this point, we've talked about this before. Ultimately, we need to provide a report to the federal government on use of those funds. Do we compromise that by a budget modification of this nature?
We would have to specifically point out within all of these budgeted expenses what we would submit as the expenditure to the reporting agency for ARPA. We would just have to identify that after the fact.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
We have now passed a very, very slim budget with all of the presented cuts minus the HSA. Does anybody wish to make any further motions? Then I guess the next item would be letter G, to authorize publication of the recommended 2023 budget, including changes made to this meeting, made at this meeting and the previous budget meetings. Mr. Bart.
Thank you. As has been noted before, there's a time requirement. We need to publish it 15 days at least prior.
We do need to circle back to the changes to the other funds.
Before. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yep, and then the final item that we would need to decide upon would be the amount to place into contingency to be available for future expansion of the budget, right? So
we did that at the last meeting. We went up to the 25 million, whatever.
So you're right. So we will put the gap in contingency. I'm sorry. Okay. We don't, that number will be shown here. Okay. The only other thing that we do need to take a look at is the sheet called changes to other funds. The one item that was dependent on action taken in which you just voted on, the taxi, is now, it would be a correlating decrease in revenue on here. So everything on this sheet is a cleanup, the same situation as before, just right-sizing revenues and expenses to match. So everything on this list would now be appropriate changes in the budget based on what we now know. These, if you need, do you want me to go through the list individually?
Why don't you?
Okay, so on the taxi, we would be reducing revenue $11,475,000. Infrastructure capital outlay, this is a project where we've received a grant and we put the grant money into the budget, but we didn't record the corresponding expenditures. So this would just be balancing that fund. In public safety, the same scenario with the agreement with Mid-State Technical College and cleaning up how we presented the revenues and expenses. The wastewater utility, there will be some change anticipated with the quotes that we are in process of receiving for insurance. We would also have that in a small change in the EMS fund. Also in the EMS fund would be removing the $23,950 for principal or interest expense that is going to now be placed on the debt levy. And then in the internal service fund, we had a little bit of insurance adjustments and then adjustments related to properly anticipating our diesel fuel revenue and expenses.
So we need action on this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We need action on these changes based on the budget recommendations that we've just passed. Motion by Mr. Wagner. Second by Mr. Fisher. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Now, you set the date?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to authorize publication of the recommended 2023 budget, including changes made to this in this meeting and from previous budget meetings presented by Mr. Bard.
Thank you. Yeah, as I started to mention, we have to publish the proposed budget for the public review at least 15 days prior. So we need to hurry up and get this in order to be able to have the public hearing, which you noted in a minute will be the next item on Wednesday, November 30th. That meets the legal requirements, meets state requirements. And so that would be my request that you officially at this point authorize the publication of what you've approved tonight with the changes in the official city newspaper.
Motion by Mr. Fisher, seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. Questions, discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Letter H, announce date and time of the public hearing for the proposed budget and tax levy. That will be Wednesday, November 30th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Item I, adjournment. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Varsho, seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. All those in favor of adjourning? Opposed?
Yes.
We're adjourned.